Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at a brand new feature release from the Yuzu emulator team. This new feature is a rewrite of their buffer cache. This buffer cache apparently helps a lot with GPU emulation, especially so reducing some bottlenecks on lower end CPUs and GPU combinations. This video is mainly going to concentrate on what you guys pretty much want to see, what games have improved in performance, what games are now rendering better, and what you can expect if you're going to be using this new feature. Now, at time of making this video, this feature is only going to be available in their early access builds. That's pretty much just the way it goes. All new in-testing features go to early access, and then probably in a week or two maybe, it's going to be merged to mainline. So if you aren't a Yuzu Patreon supporter, you can just wait for the mainline builds to release. Then you'll have access to everything that's going to be featured in this video. As I said, I'm going to be taking a look at some of the most commonly requested games on my channel. Those include Super Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and so on. So let's kick things off by taking a look at a game that has, well, at least in my testing over the last day or so, seen a pretty significant improvement to performance and is one of my very favorite games, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This benchmark for Breath of the Wild is going to be separated into three sections. I'm going to look at Korok Forest, Hateno Village, and Hyrule Castle, three of the most demanding areas on the Nintendo Switch. In this first area, you can see performance has gone up quite sizably. Please remember that the system I'm using is an i7 10700K at 5GHz and an RTX 3070. Regardless, this performance percentage increase is going to be seen on pretty much every system, so you can expect a very nice bump in performance in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, even if you're on a much lower end system like this. Jumping over to Hateno Village, the performance difference is pretty much the same, at least percentage-wise. On the left, I'm getting somewhere the mid to high 30s to the 40s. Then on the right, using the new buffer cache, it is somewhere between 55 to 60 frames per second most of the time. It does slightly drop down some of the time, like you'll see it drop to like 48 to 50, but those are usually just for a few moments. It should be noted that those drops are not shader caching related. There are just some weird frame rate drops on Breath of the Wild 1.6.0, which I can't really explain. There are just some weird frame drops that occur on that version of the game. The final area I want to take a look at in Breath of the Wild is probably the place that has seen the biggest performance improvement, Hyrule Castle. Here in this example, you can see the performance, at least on my system, has close to doubled. This area, as you can see before, was running somewhere in the mid to low 30s, at least when I'm not recording gameplay, whereas on this new system with the new buffer cache, it is, I'm not going to say locked 60, but it's definitely in the mid to high 50s or close to 60 FPS a lot of the time. Okay, so next up, let's jump over to what we have, Super Mario Odyssey, and take a look at some of the differences on this buffer cache update there. Okay, so for anyone who has been active on my Discord knows a lot of areas that previously had slowdowns are now going to be fixed in Super Mario Odyssey. These include, but are not limited to, areas like just here in Lost Kingdom, where you can see performance has gone up by 30 frames per second on my system from 68 to an average of 98. Now, I must stress that not every area in Super Mario Odyssey is going to see improvement like this. However, some areas, like for example Lost or Moon Kingdom that you're looking at right now, that were suffering due to issues with the old buffer cache, are going to see a fairly substantial improvement to performance. The Overwatch area of Metro is just another example of one of these areas where the frame rate has gone up from around 70 to 73 to roughly 96 to 100 FPS. It kind of varies from run to run. Basically, all you need to know is that these areas are now faster than they were before. Okay, so what's next on the list? We have Animal Crossing New Horizons. Sorry, I just have some notes taken. As I said, I was kind of short on time making this video, but as we've seen before, Animal Crossing New Horizons has also seen a very nice bump in performance thanks to this new buffer cache. Especially so, I've noticed better performance in the very central areas of islands, particularly around rivers, waterfalls, and large building structures. You can expect to see much greater FPS than before. And to top this off, for anyone who was playing Animal Crossing New Horizons on the Vulkan API, so pretty much AMD and Intel iGPU users, thankfully they have now fixed the font rendering in this title on this new buffer cache, And on top of the fix to fonts, the performance of this game has also improved a fair amount. In this example, you can see me going from 43 to 45 FPS up to around 55 to 60. Something that should be noted for Animal Crossing is that on kind of the outskirts or the outer edges of the island, performance is kind of unaffected. It's pretty much the same speed as it was before, which was pretty good. The main difference is that on the kind of heavy internal areas of the island, like where there's all these bodies of water, houses, trees and such, the performance doesn't tank down to like the mid to low 30s and 40s anymore, which is pretty good in my book. Okay, the next game we have is Xenoblade Chronicles. Specifically, the first game we're going to be taking a look at is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. For this benchmark, I use the 60 frames per second mod, which you can find in the mod repo. You'll find a link for that down in this video's description. Here on the old buffer cache, there were pretty serious issues, especially in these open areas. Even if you were using a much lower end system and trying to get 30 frames per second, previously this was really hard to do in this game. As you can see, performance is much better on this new buffer cache, and even if you don't have a really high-end system like I currently do, you are going to be able to more than likely achieve 30 frames per second in this game, since it is itself a native 30 frames per second title. Another change given to us in this update was a fix for the weird flickering that could happen in Xenoblade titles. This flickering would happen on like fog, clouds, particle effects from special attacks and so on, and thankfully it has been fixed. As I said, these changes affect all three Xenoblade games, and even though Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is affected, this game is still pretty weird and suffers from a really weird memory leak both on OpenGL and Vulkan. So while it is really close to being perfectly rendered and runs really well after this change, I still can't say it's playable because of that memory leak and the fact that it just like uses all your RAM in like 4 or 5 minutes. Thankfully, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and Xenoblade Chronicles Torna aren't as bad, since those games are on a newer version of the engine. So those games, I could say you could play them, but it's just really hard to call all of these games playable just yet until that strange memory leak is fixed. Okay, so before I throw the graphs up on screen to give you a better indication of exactly how much stuff has improved both on AMD and Nvidia GPUs, I'm just going to go through some honorable mentions in respect to a few other games that I found that are greatly improved on this new change as well. Okay, so first up we have Octopath Traveler running on the Vulkan API. Previously, it was this kind of horrible, blown out vertex exploded mess, while now it seems to be rendered pretty well. I'm not going to say perfect because I did notice some areas of gameplay like in battles where the lighting doesn't work quite well, but yeah, it's rendered really well on Vulkan now, and having tested it on my own system for about 3 or 4 hours, I didn't encounter any crashes or seizing up of gameplay. So yeah, that's a pretty cool improvement, 1 to Octopath Traveler's rendering, and 2 an improvement to the Vulkan API itself. My final game that's going to be an honorable mention is brought to you by Toxa over on my Discord server. Big shout out to you for pointing out that the Lego Harry Potter games are now working. And again, thanks to this buffer cache update, the strange vertex explosions and general performance of these games has pretty significantly improved. I again can't call them playable since I was only notified of these games working in the last like 2 or 3 hours, literally 2 hours before making this video. So yeah, cheers to Toxa for pointing out to me that this game was now working on the emulator. Okay, so before I end things, I want to throw up on screen some of the benchmark numbers that have been compiled for this new buffer cache update. First, I'm going to show the numbers I captured on my own Nvidia system using OpenGL. Then I'm also going to put up some numbers which were captured on a Ryzen 5 3400G paired with an AMD Radeon RX 550. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little more casual than my videos usually are and a little less structured, but personally I kind of liked doing a little bit more of a casual and just kind of workflow based video, so do let me know what you think of this kind of video structure. Once again guys, thank you all very much for watching, I greatly appreciate it. As always, remember to like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see all future videos from me.